recorded in Little Italy, Louisiana. Welcome to Pinstripe Alley, the official mobcast with A.P. Finney. Ladies and gentlemen, wise guys and made men alike, welcome to the Pinstripe Alley official mobcast with me, that guy, A.P. Finney. Hope you're doing well today. I know I certainly am, especially since what we're going to talk about on the mobcast today. But first, as always, I have to thank everyone who has purchased a copy of my book, The Gatekeepers, and the second Gatekeepers as well, The Gatekeepers Entry 2. Warm Barrels, Cold Blood. Thank you all. Purchased on Amazon, Kindle, wherever you purchased it. If you bought it directly from me, if I know you, thank you. I appreciate that. It's very, very supportive. Thank you from the bottom of my heart and lower intestine. That's just how deep it goes, you know. Thank you so much. So, let me tell you, today I got a whopper for you. Today, we are going to talk about the murders, not all of them, because Christ, I don't have, 6 years to do a podcast, but even that's probably not long enough. But we're going to talk about the murders in the mafia. We're going to talk about several of them. Now, I wanted to concentrate on, I know a lot of people are probably going to be like, are they going to be the most gruesome? That was my first thought to do. That was my first intention, was to make one about the most gruesome murders. But I also want to bring in some of the most symbolic murders as well. Because in the mafia, many times when someone's executed, it is done with a message in the murder. To give an example, this is a famous one actually. It's been used in a lot of mob stories. I know for a fact it was used in The Sopranos. Whenever someone is killed, when they're caught snitching or going to the cops, or they're believed to be a snitch or an FBI agent or federal agent, they're killed and their body is found with a dead rat stuffed in the mouth of the corpse. Yes, a dead rat stuffed in the mouth of the corpse. It usually shows this guy was a rat. We know he was a rat, and now he's fucking dead. Like, they're basically saying, we throwing this fish back, like, we know this guy, he's out of our hands now. We give him back. I don't know. That's what I would think, because they take those kinds of things very seriously. But if you ever want to know that, not only can you go back and look at all the instances of people who have died being found out as FBI agents or informants, but also it's in the movies, the stories, every single story. Someone's a rat, someone's flipped for the cops, and they end up getting executed. Sometimes it's normal style, with their on their knees, hands behind their back, bullet right through the forehead or in the mouth, whichever, or being going all the way back to the time when they actually put concrete blocks on people's feet. Yes, the concrete block, toss them off a bridge. That's it. Whatever. Yeah, there is so many different methods that they have used for execution over the years. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at a website now, which I'll give credit to, the nationalcrimesyndicate.com, and in their methods of execution, and this is just a list of the simple. I'm sure there are so many I don't even know of. Somebody's probably gotten creative, given the amount of sociopathic characters that are or were in the mafia as in previous history. Their first on the list is the obvious, the firearm. And actually, before I go into this, for those who may not be completely aware about the mafia itself, the mafia consisted of 5 different families. The main families most memorable were the Gambino, the Colombo, the Bonanno, the Lucchese, and the Genovese. So those were the 5 put together. The 5 members, or the 5 bosses of each family, or each boss of the family, they come together and form something called the Commission. And this was put together by Lucky Luciano, Salvatore Lucania, aka Lucky Luciano, early 20s, was in the 5 Points gang with Al Capone. So he's an old time gangster. He's the one who said, let's go ahead, put this commission together. We got to stop killing each other and start making money. So obviously that did not stop them from killing each other, but they did make a lot more money. So I'm not going to go deeply into that. I'll actually save that for another podcast. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because this commission, the majority of the murders I'm going to talk about, they're not as gruesome, but all of them are contract killings. They're all hits by the mafia. The majority of the time that there's a contract killing, there has to be a decision made by the commission. It's supposed to be made. Obviously, some people didn't follow that rule and just got trigger happy, but whatever. It has to be made by the commission. It has to be, brought out before them. They have to agree on it, and then whoever's killed, a very important decision is made. Whatever. It has to be done within the commission. So, what happens here is most of these people were brought up to the commission and died. A couple of them not. But all of them were done. They are all mafia related. So with that being said, now that we have the mafia, we know what's going on here, in case you didn't. Now we're going to move on to the list. The list, or the methods of execution used by mafia members all around the world on nationalcrimesyndicates.com, and their methods of execution used by mafia section. Under firearms, it says mobsters are often illustrated with Tommy guns or handguns. Almost all mafia members had firearms, and guns were frequently used for executions. Okay, so whatever. That being said, no matter where you get shot by one person, you get shot by a lot, you get, gunned down. It's silenced kill, pillow over the face with a gun through the pillow, whatever. Firearm is the most common thing to use. Quick, easy, sometimes messy, sometimes not, but if you're at far range, it doesn't matter. I would imagine you're not close enough to let forensics get, whatever, hopefully, but whatever. At least in the time that the mafia was more pertinent, I would say in the 70s, But anyway, firearms, yes, the most common. The next one on the list is cutting. That goes without saying. I don't know if it's knives through the throat, femoral artery, whatever. You get cut. Knives have been used probably equally, if not more than guns when it comes to killing. And I'd say they were used a lot during the Prohibition era and around that time too, all the way up to the 50s. If you go back and look at the many catalogs of murders that were done, many of them were done by, severance of an artery with a blade. And it's been documented more than once. You'd have to go back and look. You guys, I'll check and see. I'll see if I still have the site for that. Because there was a catalog of it. So there's suffocation, no matter how, rag in the mouth, fiber wire around the throat, things like that. These are things that the mob used quite often in suffocation. Every time I think of suffocation, for some reason, I don't know why, I think of Luca Brasi from the first Godfather movie. He was killed with wire around the throat. Big, huge dude. Real name, I think Danny Montana, if I'm not mistaken. Lenny Montana, something. I think it's Lenny Montana. He was actually an enforcer in the mob, and he was actually in the movie because the family he was with wanted him to be there to make sure that they didn't, really defame the mob's way of life. So even the Godfather, the real mob, had their hands in that, which is an interesting fact. But so beating, a lot of people were beaten to death. That's the next on the list. Violent beatings, bats, crowbars, shit, anything really they can get their hands on, to be honest. I mean, I'm pretty sure many people have been killed by a common house lamp, just whatever was around, I would imagine. Most of the time they're going to use a gun, but if they're really trying to send a message, if they're really trying to, get their point across, then one of the things that you would really expect to see is someone's, just being honest, their brains literally beaten in and the weapon laying around and who knows. But yes, beating, not just the mafia, that's all over. Poisoning, that goes without saying. There's only one way to do that, there's several ways to do it, but ingestion of poison, drowning, which I mentioned earlier, the cement on the feet, transport, basically they have been listed as transport, basically hitting somebody with a fucking car. So, not too subtle, but whatever works, chief. Pushing from height, throwing them off a building, look out below. Hanging, that's wild. Bombing and burning, yep. And yeah, so those are a lot of ways. Those I can really concur that those are that's a pretty accurate, at least of what I've seen, and doing research for the mafia. So yeah, all those things covered. There is really no limitation to what they're going to do. So with that being said, the first thing that I want to talk about, or first person, I want to talk about a member of the Gambino family, and Roy DeMeo was a pretty prevalent member of the Gambino crime family. And many people, when they think of the Gambino crime family, they think of, the first thing I think of is John Gotti. But, that's just me. A lot of other mob heads might think otherwise. But in the Gambino family, there was a crew. And the way a crew works, I did cover this before. The way the crew works, it's ran by something called a capo, or a captain. And this is within the ranks of the mafia. So he was a captain, and he had his crew called the DeMeo crew. This man was named, the man that ran it was a captain named Roy Albert DeMeo. And, he was Italian-American mobster, lived in New York City, or at least from New York City, basically resided there along the majority of his life, headed the group, the DeMeo crew. And this crew was known all throughout the streets of New York, probably all throughout the East Coast, as being one of the most brutal crews in La Cosa Nostra. One of the most vicious, sadistic crews in La Cosa Nostra. Their methods of murder, and also their methods of body disposal. I mean, all of them together. It's absolutely, it's really a wild ride, when you think about it. I'm going to go into detail here about it. This man, Roy DeMeo, he and his crew, they were actually responsible for about 200 plus murders. And the majority of these murders were committed by Roy DeMeo. So Roy DeMeo was definitely into setting an example for the rest of the crew. And the rest of the crew was as vicious as well. The interesting thing about Roy DeMeo is that I'm not going to go into deep detail about his history, but I will say that, he was born in 1942. He basically was a loan shark since school. I mean, he was a loan shark, started off, loaning $100 out and beating up kids that didn't pay him. I mean, he hit the ground early, and he kind of found his way into Phil's Lounge, and basically it kind of went from there. It's where he met the Gambinos, and he met a man named Nino Gaggi in '66. And, that was that. I mean, he went on, he went work for the Gambino family, so on and so forth. And so basically, Roy DeMeo made his name for being vicious. So 200 plus murders, the majority of them was him. He enjoyed killing. And also, in the grand scheme of things, DeMeo was kind of a shithead, but we'll get to that. But Roy DeMeo, his favorite thing to do, he actually had his own method of execution that he called the Gemini method. And why was it called the Gemini? Because he would lure victims into the Gemini Club, a place called the Gemini Club in New York. And he would lure them in, he would lure them into the back. And then once they were into the back of the bar, there was a small, area. There was a small, apartment area. And as soon as they were there, DeMeo would surprise the victim, jump out, shoot them in the head with a silenced pistol, and then quickly wrap their head up with a towel, just to make sure, that there's just a lack of blood. And another crew member comes by, and they go right for the heart with a knife. They stab the heart repeatedly. Numerous stab wounds directly in the heart until the person's dead. And then after that, clean up as much blood as possible with bleach or whatever. Take the body to the bathtub, dismember it. Roy DeMeo made sure that he and several of his crew members dismembered the body, drained the blood from it completely, and had every single part of the body, the trunk, the legs, the limbs, the head, everything completely drained, wrapped in cardboard, and shipped directly to the local landfill. So that was the reason. That's one of the reasons why Roy DeMeo was so feared. He didn't hesitate. He didn't hesitate to kill anybody. Anybody could get it. It doesn't matter. It was said Roy DeMeo would kill a boss if the price was right. That's the kind of guy Roy DeMeo was. Took a lot of pride in killing. Another person I'm going to talk about as well. Let me pull this up here. Richard Kuklinski. Nickname was the Iceman. This man was involved with the Gambino family. He actually was involved with, he started with pornography bootlegging and then moved on to shylocking and collection, and he would definitely kill for them as well. The thing about him, his method of killing is it was diverse, but still in the ballpark: stabbing, shooting, blunt force trauma, even, using cyanide in a spray bottle, So this guy kind of had his own little flow there. But the thing that he would do that stood him out, the reason he was called the Iceman, is because he had a reputation for freezing his dead victims in an industrial freezer. And sometimes he would leave them in this freezer for years before thawing them out and dumping them. That means he had an industrial freezer, probably more than one, and they were full of dead bodies for like 10, 11 months. And he's like, all right, now it's time to get rid of this shit. Right? He would freeze his dead victims, throw it in the industrial freezer, and then after, you throw them out, toss them anywhere, I guess. By that time, freeze-dried, I don't know. I don't have anything in my freezer of this sort, so that I'm aware of. But, he did a little, but to end his story, he did a little bit of trading with Saudi Arabia with some automobiles, and one of these automobiles still had a dead body in it. So that was the end of Kuklinski. He also was kind of a shithead. And speaking of, I actually never did say what happened to DeMeo here. That was actually, they actually did catch him with one of these stored up bodies, this assortment of body parts. After a while, you keep using the same method and someone's going to catch on, but that goes without saying. So yeah, Richard Kuklinski, the Iceman. So yeah. I do also want to talk about too a man. So this gentleman was also with the Gambino family, and his name was Nicodemo Scarfo, and everyone called him Little Nicky Scarfo. He's a smaller guy. To be honest, he kind of had a Don Knotts look to him, but, to be honest, if I had said that to him in his face, he'd probably stab me in the fucking eyeball. But the guy, I remember, and this is just a personal think back, after seeing a documentary on I believe it was the National Geographic channel, watching Phil Leonetti, who is a previous mobster also with the Gambino family, he was the nephew of Nicky Scarfo, and his account was Nicky Scarfo was such a brutal murderer. He was such a sadistic human being. He enjoyed killing so much that he would just basically revel in the person's death all the way down to their last breath. And he specifically said that his uncle, Nicky Scarfo, would kill someone. He said he was actually standing there and he had his nephew, Phil Leonetti, point the gun at the victim and shoot him. Nicky Scarfo would get down on his knee and put his ear down to the victim's chest. And he told him, he looked up at him, he said, "Philly, shoot him again." So Philly put another round in him. And then Nicky Scarfo gets back down on the floor and listens. And he's like, "I love this." And I'm going to paraphrase it as best as I can. He basically said, "I love that I can hearing their last breath before they die. I love that." That was Nicky Scarfo. That, let me tell you, when I heard that story, or I heard him give that recollection, of the day that, and when Phil Leonetti gives an interview, by the way, all the lights are out. The lights are just completely blacked out. He doesn't want his face to see anywhere. I want to say maybe might have seen his picture somewhere, but yeah, every time he gives an interview, it's completely blacked out. Another murder that I do want to mention also, and this kind of has a story behind it, but what are we here for, right? This story involves FBI agent Joe Pistone. Now, I'm not going to tell the full story because that's not what this is about, but you do need to understand that the reason why this contract killing was made was because that an FBI informant, an actual agent, was in the mafia, was actually was joining the Bonanno family. So, just to try to make a long story short, Joe Pistone joins the family under the name Donnie Brasco, and he gets brought in. The main character, there's several people that he meets, but the main character I want to talk about is Sonny Black. And Sonny Black was a captain in the Bonanno family. And so he got really close to Sonny Black over time. Well, at some point, there's more to the story, like I said, but at some point when they get to the point where they basically make the decision to have Donnie Brasco made, and they want him to be made man, they want him to kill someone for the family. Someone needs to be executed. This is the perfect way for Donnie Brasco to make his bones and become a made man. He's about to get his stripes. Sonny Black meets him, says, "We need you to kill someone." Joe Pistone, he looks at him and says, "So where is he?" At that point, the FBI, they pull him out. They say, "You're not going to kill anybody. This is the end. Operation Donnie Brasco is now over." The very next thing that is done is the FBI, they approach Sonny Black at his home. And they basically tell him, they ask him, "Do you know Donnie Brasco?" And, I mean, of course, his first response is, I might have heard of him. He's going to fucking lie. And the cops say, "Well, let me just tell you this. He's an FBI agent. And if you want to cooperate, you're welcome to now, because he's been with you this whole time and he's been with us. So, long story short, you guys are kind of in deep shit." Sonny Black, being the true wise guy that he is, completely laid his life down in the name of Omerta, turned him away. But he also knew what the next thing was, because now that an FBI agent had literally infiltrated their walls of secrecy, he knew that he was going to die. There was no way around it. He basically gave his blessing to an FBI agent. He sanctioned the the welcoming of basically the greatest enemy that the mafia has. So there was no way around it. Sonny Black disappeared. And when Sonny Black was found, it was in the woods, in a forest area. They found a body bag, and they opened the body bag up. And when they unzipped it, it was his body, and the only thing the thing that stood out the most, both of his hands were cut off. This type of killing goes to show you have allowed someone to step into our realm, and you have allowed them to shake hands with our boss. You've allowed them to break bread with us. And that basically shows his hands were cut off. He can no longer have hands because he has misused them. He did not use them to serve the family, but rather invite the demon in to break them down. So that type of killing, I feel like it's a significant killing because that killing itself marked the beginning of probably the first stages, the downfall of the American Mafia. It continued to go on after that, but not for very long. To be at its highest state between the 20s all the way up to the 60s and 70s, but that wasn't really like a planned thing I was going to talk about. But I feel like that execution is pretty important, and I also think it's a unique one as well. So I'm going to say this before I move on to the next murder. This is going to be a little bit. This is going to be. This might be one of the most gruesome ones I talk about. Um, but I'm going to talk about it because, for one thing, a reenactment of it, not a very accurate reenactment for obvious purposes, but a reenactment was done in Casino, the movie Casino from 1995 with Robert De Niro, Joe Pesci. It had a plethora of other actors in it too that are usual mob actors. But the casino cash skimming, the entire racket that they had with the casino. If you've never seen the movie, it's a phenomenal movie. If even if you're not a fan of the mob, definitely watch this movie. It's great. That's all I can say. It's a classic. So in the movie, they kidnapped Billy McCarthy, who was at odds with the family, and Anthony Spilotro placed Billy McCarthy's head in a vice, and he wanted to know who his confidant was, who was the associate he was working with, and he asked him. He's like, who is it? And so at this point in the movie, after they explained they had been torturing him for 3 days and they shoved an ice pick in his balls and everything else, they put his head in a vice grip and turned it, and one of his eyeballs popped out. I mean, it was pretty crazy scene in the movie. But that is tame. That's like, you know, gospel compare. It's an entire gospel choir compared to what actually happened. I'm going to tell you, the actual Anthony Spilotro, the actual mobster, when his outfit suspected that someone named William Jackson, they called him Action Jackson, they suspected that this man had become an informer. So they assigned this killing to Anthony Spilotro. And this is actually what happened. Instead of, all the things they said they did, even ice picking the ball sounds awful. And the vice grip thing is pretty shitty too, which they actually gave him a mercy killing at the end by cutting his throat. This guy in real life would have wished this had happened because Spilotro tortured him for 2 days, okay? He started by beating the shit out of him. Beat this dude senseless. He beat him. Then he, pulled out his knives and razor blades and went to work, sliced this dude from head to toe, made a bloody mess out of him. Okay? Then, if that wasn't enough, he goes and gets his blowtorch and burns this guy up. I mean, turns this guy's skin into embers, right? And then, Spilotro rips the skin off of a 300-pound man. After cutting this man up and burning the shit out of him, he has his skin ripped off of him. And it goes even deeper than that. So hang on. This is the last part. But after his skin was ripped off of the man, he was hung by his rectum with a meat hook. And he hung there until his heart gave out. Boy, that's something you can tell at Thanksgiving, huh? I mean, dude, that is some hardcore shit. And that's what I love to tell people whenever they see the mob and they see all of these wonderful things about the suits and the cars and the accent and the cigars and all that. I'm like, yeah. And they also hung people by their rectum. Never forget that, Chief. All right. So yeah, Anthony Spilotro did not fuck around, and that's all I can say. So after that, we're gonna move on pretty quickly. Most people, or most a lot of people who keep up with these type of crime statistics and such and so forth will always bring up the St. Valentine's Day Massacre, one of the most famous public killings in history. And it involves, this, I don't know, some low-level guy. I think his name was, Alphonse Capone. The man, what do you go to prison for? Tax evasion? That's nothing, right? Al Capone had this killing done. It was, to make a long story short, this was during the time of the Prohibition era, during something called the Beer Wars. And during the Beer Wars, there were a lot of factions. This is before, this was before the commission was made. Everybody was just going ape shit. It was family against family. People were dying left and right. There was a time when like 100 bodies would turn up in a month. This was during the Beer Wars. This was during the time of Capone, another ruthless mobster. Capone, basically what happened is he was in competition with a man named Jugs. Look at me. What is this? What is this, a porno podcast? George Bugs Moran. Who gives a shit? It's George Bugs Moran. And on Valentine's Day in 1929, Capone sent two men disguised as the law, disguised as police officers. And he sent them to a North Side garage. Now, this garage was owned by Bugs Moran, and it was the headquarters of Moran's bootlegging operation. And so the cops that Capone, the quote cops Capone was sent to go to arrest them, they basically told them to raise their hands and face the wall. They caught him in the garage, told him, they were like, stop, raise your hands, put them on the wall. No, we're going to search you. So immediately the seven mobsters like, oh shit, it's the cops. So they immediately turn around, put their hands on the wall. And then the two men pull out Tommy guns and kill all of them. All seven of them gunned down right there. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre is famous for two reasons. Number one, it's one of the most brutal killings in history. And number two, this was the undoing of Al Capone. It really was the beginning of the undo, because this made him, his entire operation was now blown wide open by this crime. He got too bold. It's like, we can kill anybody, fuck around and find out, So this was this was the beginning of the end for Al Capone. But this killing, these men were ruthlessly killed in cold blood. I mean, had no idea they were about to die. I would say it's pretty gruesome. Tommy gun firepower on like that, probably pretty bad. Not too gruesome, but it does mark a specific time in the history of La Cosa Nostra. And I mean, when we're talking Al Capone, I mean, this is a guy who beat, two men to death with a baseball bat, so there is that. I did mention earlier, though, that there are multiple messages in Killing in the Mob. One of them I remember specifically is shoot a shot through the eyeball basically indicates that the person who made the shot is now watching whoever finds the body or whoever they're connected to. Basically, we're watching you now. We're on to you. That's basically what that signifies. And this is another type, and I'm actually going to be specific with the next. Antonio Caponegro. Okay. Philadelphia mobster. He went through a power struggle in his head, and he just decided that Angelo Bruno, the boss in the Philly mob, should be killed. And he was just like, basically, the dude needs to be popped. And so he had him shot to death in front of his house. Now, he was immediately summoned toward, to talk to the commission, the head of each head of the five families, the commission. And after that, nobody saw him again. And except they didn't see him alive. When they found Caponegro's body, again, it was found in the trunk of a car in the South Bronx on April 18th, 1980. And he had dollar bills crammed into his mouth and anus. This signifies that someone has gotten too greedy. Another message, another execution message with zero subtlety. Zero. That is out of the box. No pun intended. Another famous killing in the mob is Carmine Galante. It's interesting because Carmine Galante's death is basically, it was carried out because he believed that he was the boss and the commission did not. See, he was part of the Bonanno family, and he basically became the self-proclaimed boss in 1974 after the boss, whose name was Philip Rastelli. Everyone called him Rusty. He was sent to prison, and Galante had been the underboss for this family, for the Bonannos, for years. And so basically he's like, I've put my time in. I've been the underboss. I'm the boss now. And when he attempted to do boss things, his greed got the best of him, and he decided, I'm not going to share the money or the profits with the rest of the 5 families. This immediately alerted someone named Frank Thierry, who was the boss of the Genovese family at the time. And he basically came to the commission and said, this can't happen. What he's doing is wrong. Actually, what he said was, this fucking guy is greedy and it's time to take him out. That's it. I want to whack this guy because he's not supposed to. He probably didn't sound like that, but that's kind of what I think he sounded like. And the commission said, sure. No, he said, let's get rid of him. Fuck it. And Galante was popped. 1979, eating lunch, Joe and Mary's Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, New York. And the interesting thing about his death, he was found at this restaurant with, his nickname was the Cigar. That's what they always called him, is the Cigar. The last picture of him, and actually he's not even alive, he's sitting there dead with the cigar hanging out of his mouth. And that's fascinating to me, because what a better way to be found, I mean, there could be way worse. I think it's actually, twisted side of me thinks it's actually kind of classy. I mean, there's way worse ways that cigar could have been found. It could have been in his ass, So, I mean, I feel like that's probably one of the most stylish deaths. I mean, at least he wasn't found like other people. Albert Anastasia, who was gunned down while getting his hair cut. That's got to suck. Take a little off the top. No, not that much. That's it. Albert Anastasia, pop while he's getting his hair cut. Let's see, who else we got here? I remember, other than Albert Anastasia, it was Angelo Bruno. Sorry. That's who I was trying to think of. I could not remember his name. Angelo Bruno. He was actually, this guy, not to go too deep into his story, he was also involved with little Nicky Scarfo. As a matter of fact, Scarfo is the one that literally popped him, actually. And how he was found, his body found in the trunk of a car in South Bronx, okay? And he had 14 bullet and knife wounds in his body, okay? That's... 14 bullet, and he had $300 crammed into his mouth and 300 stuffed in his anus. So another greed death. But the thing that really gets me, and it's a shame that I can't actually show you the picture. The picture of Angelo Bruno is, he was shot in the back of the head, and his mouth is wide open. Like if you Google the body of Angelo Bruno, his mouth is wide open, and it looks insane. This looks like something out of a horror movie. Like, it looks like they were filming this, and it looks, it's kind of disturbing, but it's kind of interesting too. So now we're kind of going to do a time jump into the 80s, mainly 1985. We're going to go back to the Gambino family. Now, the Gambino family still is pretty strong, even after the infiltration of Donnie Brasco. They're doing all right. This is before, early 90s, when John Gotti is the boss. But Paul Castellano, basically, when Carlo Gambino passed away, who was the boss of the Gambino family, a lot of people, they were not happy with him making Paul Castellano the successor to the Gambino family. A lot of people did not respect Paul Castellano. He was a businessman, and Carlo Gambino, before dying, I would imagine, it's never really explained why he did it, but I would imagine he wanted to make sure that the finances were important to Carlo Gambino, and therefore he wanted someone who could oversee them. And I figure he just wanted to make it more of a business now. Who knows where his head was at the time, But he wanted him to be the boss. And so basically they honored his wishes and made him the boss, even though they were very unhappy with him. So one of the capos in the crew, John Gotti at the time, he was especially not happy with him being the boss. And John Gotti is definitely a man who would undertake. He felt that someone with more prestige, someone who was basically harder. He felt like he was too soft. So he devised a plan to do something about it and organized his own crew, a hit squad, to take down Castellano. And the thing that set things over the edge is when Anil Delacroix, who was John Gotti's mentor and longtime friend, had passed away. Castellano did not attend the funeral. This is what finally sent him over the edge, and he decided it's time to kill this man. And while he was walking out of a steakhouse called Sparks Steakhouse in Manhattan in 1985, when he was coming out, he was gunned down by the hit crew from John Gotti. And this killing was brutal. I mean, it was definitely brutal in the sense that he was, basically Swiss cheese with bullets, for lack of a better words. But, it also showed, the very core, the very mob at its essence, and it shows that at some point in time after this happened, which was, a very short time after, John Gotti stepped right into the chair. And the funny thing about it is nobody said a word about it. So, if there's anything I can say about Castellano's killing, it definitely set the wheels in motion for John Gotti to become the Dapper Don that he was. The Dapper Don and the Teflon Don. But again, that's for another podcast. And also on this same channel, if you do want to see a video that I made about John Gotti, it's definitely there. It's part of my series called Mob Gods, Hard Hitters in the American Mafia, and it has its own playlist on my YouTube channel, which is called AP Fanini. But whatever, there you go. But yeah, that another historic killing to me personally. On a note of finality, though, the last mob killing that I think I'm going to touch on is it's not going to be by a very well-known person in the mob, but I have to say it's quite interesting. So this man worked for the mob group and the mafia conglomerate Murder Inc. And I'm not even going to begin to go into Murder Inc. I'm just going to tell you it was a crew of dudes, because that is an entire podcast all on its own. So we're not going to begin to get into that, but we are going to talk about Walter Sage. And Walter Sage was actually a hitman for Murder Inc. And he actually kind of had a greed problem, like many others. But the interesting thing about this man is how he was found. And all I will say about this specific hitman, Walter Sage, is that he, just like many others like him, got greedy. And he actually started skimming money from the casino, which was owned by the mafia. He started skimming money from the slot machines. And so Jacob Drucker and Irvin Cohen were actually put on trial separately for the killing of Walter Sage. And Walter Sage was killed with an ice pick. Okay. So that goes, they went ahead and finished him off with an ice pick. But when he was found in Swan Lake, July 31st, 1937, not only was his dead body in the lake, but they tied the fucking slot machine to his body and threw him in the lake. So it's like, if you want this slot machine so bad, take this motherfucker. They found him in the lake with he was basically just chained to the frame, and they found his body just, this was days later, obviously, because this thing is extremely, extremely heavy. So yeah. And, even though that is quite the brutal murder, I must say this, my friends. If they did find Walter Sage in Swan Lake on July 31st, 1937, with a slot machine tied to his body, then I can only hope that all three slots were on cherry. All right, that's it. that is it for today. I want to thank you guys so much for joining me on the Mobcast today. I hope you enjoyed it. There were certainly more to come. If you like, if you're hearing this on YouTube, please hit the like button and please subscribe to my channel. On this channel, you can see both the Mob Gods series and you can listen to my Mobcast. So, for all of you that support me, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So next Mobcast should be coming next week, and we're going to be back on schedule. So that's it. Thank you so much once again. Thank you to everyone who bought some of my books, or who bought a couple of books, actually, for those who are showing support. My website's coming soon. The website will definitely be interactive. I have a lot of things I want to share on the website. The videos will be on the website. The podcast, you'll be able to hear it there. It's going to be a lot of things. It's going to be. I'm actually having some interactive applications put specifically regarding the Gatekeeper series. So fan mail, all those things, man. I'm going to have them on the website, and I will definitely keep you guys posted. Whether it be on my Facebook page, whether it be on my look at me, I'm having a complete brain fart right now, on my Twitter, which is at AP Fanini. All those different things. If you guys are following, thank you so much. And thank you for buying a copy of The Gatekeepers 1 and 2. I thank you so much for that. So, until next time, this is AP Fanini signing out. You guys have a good one, all right? You guys, you have a good one, all right? You have a good day, capiche? Don't have a shitty one, have a good one. All right, get the fuck out of here. See you later.